Welcome to Middle Fingers Up. I am your host, Kieran, and today's episode is very special, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not just an interview, it's a conversation between brown women. So we get to do some role modeling about like the hopes and the dreams about how us brown women want to engage each other and support each other. It's also about what happens when we come together and we take out that comparing, we take out that competing, and we don't need to explain, we don't need subtitles. We get to be ourselves and practice the art of listening. Our guest today, Arunie, she is someone who creates space for brown girls to speak honestly through her podcast, Brown Girl Problems. And what I love about her work is that she creates space that isn't just about having all the answers, but it's about noticing the patterns, the themes, and the truths that keep showing up when brown women are finally allowed to talk. And we're all kind of just learning how to do this together. We're all actually kind of new at this interaction with each other. What I also love about her podcast is that she creates a safe space where we are allowed to come on and quote unquote go there. And I think you know what I mean when I say go there. And so today's episode is a mirror of that. It's about what we're learning when we listen to each other. It's all the things that we're trying to name out loud together and what it means when brown girls choose connection over silence. So I'm so excited to welcome Arunie. Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you. That was such a eloquent introduction. I was like, wow, this is the nicest way I've ever been introduced. So I appreciate you saying all those things.
I want to also say, like, when you had me on, you are an amazing host. Like, your energy is so calming. It's so inviting. The way that you ask, the way that you talk, it just gives the courage to feel like, oh, there's no stupid answer here. I can say truly what I want to say versus what I think I'm supposed to say. And I can imagine that would show up in your work with your clients as a therapist too. So I really wanted to be a fantastic host to you today because when you go to someone's house for dinner and they like really treat you well, and then you get to invite them over and you're like, okay, I really want to tell them how much it meant when they had me on. So I'm so excited to do this with you.
That's so kind. Yeah, that's really good feedback. I always say, like, it's when I listen back to my podcast, I'm like, I'm such an active listener. Like, I wish I could just shush because I'm always like, yes, tell me more. And I'm like, so, like in that person because I'm so like interested in what they have to say. So many times I have to be like, just shush and listen because I'm like, I want them to know that I'm really engaged.
Yeah. I didn't feel like it was anything out of like who you are. I felt you were engaged. And I think sometimes that's just active listening. Like it helps us have the prompts to keep going or say what we need to say. And so I appreciate it. And I think I relate to you in that too, or I'm one of those people too. So this is why I don't find it annoying. I have a bias against the yeah. So we'll do that for each other as well. And at least in this space, it's validating. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's perfect.
Is there anything in your intro? I always ask that like you want to add. I didn't share that you are a therapist as well. And I know we're going to get into that, talk a little bit about it, but is there anything that you want us to know about you that, like I said, I didn't share?
I mean, that's an interesting question just about my identity, right? Because I'm instantly thinking like, what part of my identity do I want to reach into and talk about? But in terms of my work, which I am very passionate about and I love, I am a therapist. So we'll definitely chat about that. And I'm equally very proud of the space that me and my co-host, Scheherazade, we created for Brown Girl Problems. So yeah, I think that was it. And apart from that, I have a dog. I have a German Shepherd who I love. He's almost 14. Oh. So yeah, he's an old boy, but he's the love of my life. And then I guess I'm married and I have a husband. He's also the love of my life.
I guess.
Yeah.
What's your pups or your dog's name?
Tyson.
Oh, he's 14. Yeah, German Shepherds, man, they go strong.
They go strong, and he's a little deaf and he's a little blind, but he's hanging in there.
Yeah.
Love and life.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, before we get into you as a host, also, like, have you been on that end of the guest side before?
Once or twice, and I have in the past, and it is different, right?
Yeah.
Like it is. I felt more anxious being a guest than I have ever really been being a host, because I'm like, oh my God, the pressure is on. So I know what you mean. I feel like, you were such a wonderful guest. Like, honestly, that it's like, now I'm going to dinner at your house and I'm like, I better make sure I look good and I show up properly too. So it's always interesting being a guest as well.
Yeah, it's like the therapist versus the client mentality when you're on the other sides. And I think it's good to experience both. So I'm excited for you. I 100% get it. The nerves are very different on your end than on mine. And I think it's because we have control a little bit more. I know what I'm going to say and ask you, where you don't know what to expect. So it's kind of a wild card game here. Yeah. Here we go. But before we get into that, I did want to jump into a bit of a time machine, go back into time and get to know little Arunie. And so if I were to go and meet little Arunie, I don't know, like at age maybe 12, 13, what would she tell me about what made her feel proud about being a brown girl, and then what made her feel othered?
That's a good question, because I'm glad you said an age, because it also changes. I know I've been through so many phases. So I came to Canada when I was around 7. I moved from India with my family. And at 12, around that time, I think I have started to like being brown. When I first came to Canada, I remember my mom, she has a history in like garments in India, and she has all these beautiful saris, and she wears saris everywhere, and she wears them so gracefully. And when we first came to Canada, we still talk about it, that I told her, I'm like, you're not allowed to wear saris here. Like, you're not allowed. I so wanted to just fit in. And we also moved to like Pickering, which is outside of Scarborough, outside Toronto. And Pickering historically was like, that area anyway, was a very, very white neighborhood. So there was 3 people of color in my entire school. I was one of them. My sister was one of them. And then there was like one Guyanese kid. So we were just like, I was very, very self-conscious. And then by the time I think we moved to like Mississauga, which was a little bit more multicultural. My parents, both of them got more involved in the community. We went to like different family functions. We went to the volley shows. Then I was kind of like, okay, I love dancing. I'm not a professional or anything, but I just love dancing. And then, you're at that point where you like start liking to dress up a little bit. So I think I was still very self-conscious, but starting to accept the fact that I'm brown a little bit more. But honestly, I think I would just have to say, like, I have always, historically, I think that preteen age, even in like undergrad, I've always been very much feeling like I'm the token brown person. Yeah. And sometimes I like it, sometimes I hated it, but sometimes I've learned to, like, when I need to, I can lean into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. So if we stay with little Arunie for a minute, tell us about like what would have been the rules that she would have learned about speaking or her behavior, quote unquote, like fitting in.
This is a good question, because I haven't really reflected on this age, truthfully. I've always been social, so I don't think I've ever had a problem making friends.
Yeah.
But I don't think I ever was like that serious kid until much later. I think I got influenced by friends who just had more knowledge. I was pretty naive throughout my young childhood. Like, I had no idea what was going on in the world. My parents did a really good job of like almost sheltering us from the harsh truths. So like, I found out, like, as an example, this is such a random example, but I found out that India had like a caste system in like grade 12.
Yeah.
I didn't know that existed. And it was because like my math teacher made a joke and I was like, what is that? And then he was like, you don't know? And I was like, am I supposed to? Like, I don't know. So I went home and asked my parents and she's like, then my mom explained everything to me. And I was like, why don't I know all these things?
Yes. Yeah.
And they did a good job. Like, honestly, I had a great childhood. I had a lot of fun. I was really carefree. I was so boy crazy. It was just all the time. I had a crush on every boy that walked past me, I think. So I had other priorities in life. But
Yeah.
I think I figured out things a little bit later, even like the different religions and how, how dynamic India is. I had just really learned much later in life, I feel.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that as well. I think I was like even older than grade 12 learning some of these things as well, because we also didn't talk about it. And probably like your parents, I would imagine, mine, they're just surviving and they're trying to, like you said, you use the word shelter, and I think they're trying to protect us from experiencing the things that they were going through as they were transitioning from their motherland to here. And so I can appreciate that. Then I also think for me, there's this avoidance as well for a lot of, whether it's my family, a lot of our families. I just don't want to talk about some of those historical things that have happened in India as well that created the caste system and all that. So it's like way later.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I could have really benefited from knowing that earlier. You talked about you were playful and you had fun. So what did little Arunie, what did she dream about back then? And did she feel she was allowed to dream and have her imagination and all that?
Yeah, I honestly am really grateful with both my parents encouraging us. We're two daughters. And again, like I didn't know being a daughter was a bad thing or any of that kind of discourse, even the things that I'm discussing as an adult. I feel really privileged that I didn't feel that as a child. I remember this so clearly, and I talked about it in the past. I reached out to that friend actually, because I remember in grade 7, this friend asked me, she was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I don't know what this means, but I think I want to be a psychologist. Like, I remember so clearly saying that. I also wanted to be an artist. I wanted to join the Canadian Forces at some point. I was all over the place, but I really have always wanted to do what I'm doing now. So I feel really grateful that I didn't take the straight path. I took a really convoluted way of getting here, but I got here. So I'm pretty happy the fact that I dreamt that at such a young age and it happened.
That's amazing. So could you share, if you have one or many early experiences in that younger age time that you feel shaped how you show up today as a brown woman?
I think honestly, I have to give the credit to my parents. They're really again, I'm comparing this to now as an adult.
Yeah.
When I hear other people's stories and I compare other parents, I feel just, again, really privileged that they made space for us. I've cried to my dad. I've told him things. I told him that I had a crush on a boy and he rejected me. And my dad was like, okay. He was like, okay. But he also was like, it's okay. He comforted me, but he was kind of I'm sure he was, why are you telling me this, child? But he was kind of he met me where I was at.
Yeah.
And my mom has always been that person you can talk to. I've had friends in high school, even undergrad, they would talk to my mom. They would come over and be ask her for advice. And she would help them and be empathetic. And she is just a very patient woman. So I think even now I say some things to a client or to a friend that is not really something I've learned in school, but it's something that's come from my mom. And I know she got it from her spiritual learnings. There's something that's there that's very deep rooted that we learn so much about healing just from our spiritual or religious or whatever lens it is.
100%.
A lot of that is so applicable. And she didn't read it in a textbook. She didn't go to a lecture for it, but it's just so innate.
Yeah.
And so I feel that has helped me as well, because I know I can trust my instincts. I know everything that I've learned about the world, and that just more than experience, it is just a spiritual side that I feel is very beneficial in healing.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. And I think there's a responsibility as well as someone in your position as a therapist to honestly be aware outside of the Western practices.
Yeah.
When being a person of color, I think you automatically are granted with this like privilege that we are so blessed with to have, because your lived experience, but also the motherland and the historical ways like our ancestors healed. We do utilize a lot of that. And I think you look back, and many of us growing up, our families didn't say, oh, this came from this, but
Right.
these sorts of things would show up in difficult times. And you really feel that collective mentality when someone passes, and how we all come together and support and that sort of thing. And so I think that's amazing to bring that into your practice. But also, like I said, it is a responsibility for all therapists, whether you're white or you're of color, to recognize that we do heal outside of the textbook Western talk therapy kind of ways. Like there's lots of different avenues that some of us have to sort of take outside of good old fashioned psychologists, psychiatrists, and all those folks that wrote those books. Those old white men. So,
Exactly.
So lastly, with little Arunie, so if she were to show up today in this conversation and talk to you, what do you hope she'd tell you as the grown brown woman you are today?
She'd be a mess, but in like in a really fun way. She'd be a little bit of a tomboy. She'd tell me to go play. She was outside every day. I think I was such a follower of, I still am, of my older sister. I think that's the benefit of being a younger sister. You just do everything. So I think little Arunie would just be like, whatever Anjani's doing, go do that. Go follow in her footsteps. And yeah, I think she just reminded me to have fun. I think she was just a lot of fun. She was a little bit chaotic. All my memories of that age and like a little bit around that age are like me playing outside.
Yeah.
And like really just getting dirty and really like not caring. And like we kind of, obviously as adults we lose that a little bit, but I think that's what she would say. She'd be a little ball of energy, I think.
Aw, I love that. That's so sweet. Well, thanks for letting us meet her. I appreciate that. I would love to chat with you a little bit about your fantastic podcast. You guys are in season 3?
Season 3, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to know, you have this podcast. It's called Brown Girl Problems. So it kind of is self-explanatory on so many levels, but I think a little complicated too, because where do you start with all these problems? And we all grew up similar but different. In, you know, even as I'm learning about you and your childhood, not similar to mine, but yet we still have similar issues we're dealing with as grown brown women, which is like really interesting. So I'm curious, like what for you feels different when brown women speak to each other instead of being spoken about? What are you learning about that?
I love that question. And it's kind of the way you said it. Like when me and Scheherazade, when we created this space, it's for anyone who identifies as a brown woman. And we're speaking to people who are maybe upper middle class in Pakistan. We're speaking to someone who grew up in a village in Punjab. We're speaking to like this broad range of women who are all established and wanting to share their experiences. We're talking about arranged marriages. We're talking about being kind of diminished in the workplaces. And like you said, we all have such different upbringings, but there's this common thread that is connecting us. And the way that I like to show up in that space is like, we have the safe space, but we almost need humor to kind of balance it out. Because as like the name suggests, Brown Girl Problems, and we talk about our problems and we talk about these nuances because it's everyone who's listening resonates.
Yeah.
Or everyone who's listening is learning. But we need humor because our life is not just problems, right? There's a lot of joy. There's a lot to celebrate. So the way that this podcast also is like, yes, let's talk about arranged marriage, but we don't have to talk about the worst case scenarios. We can, because they exist, but we can also talk about the success stories because even within the community, there's so much stigma around it.
Yeah.
So we try our best to balance it out. And I mean, as you know, when you have someone as a guest, like you never know where the conversation is going. You never know what they're going to say. Like you have an idea, but it goes totally somewhere else. And that's also the fun part of it. Because her and I sometimes are like, okay, we had no questions because the story took a different turn, but that was exciting. Like that's this person's life.
Yeah.
So it's really fun to kind of be on that journey.
Yeah. And I think when you mentioned the having fun aspect, I think that's so brilliant because so many of us in our community as you said earlier, we lose that childhood innocence. We lose that creativity. We sort of lose that sense of like life is also meant to be like a dance. We're not meant to just get to the end of whatever life is supposed to be. You're supposed to enjoy these moments, and shit does happen. But when we talk about it together, I think that also allows that humor and, oh, it also happens to you, and we don't get caught in our own little stigmas of like, I'm the only one going through this. But no, oh my God, we are all suffering, whether it's arranged marriage or a love marriage or interracial. Like there are always going to be moments where you're like, what the F, you know? So this isn't a fucking Bollywood movie in the way that it was supposed to be and what I watched growing up. So I also appreciate that, because I think it opens a door for people to be able to say, oh, okay, I'm willing to maybe start sharing a little bit about what that's like for me. And so what kind of feedback do you get from listeners, guests, people when they relate to some of the topics that you guys are addressing?
You know, we've had mixed, and I'll tell you why, because we've had some listeners who are not brown. Because Shez and I, we worked at the same organization. We were in finance. I was in finance back then. And we had a lot of listeners who are our friends or like our previous colleagues who were white men who were like learning. And we got like so much positive feedback from people who are not brown girls, whether they were white women or whatever it was. Like they were just learning so much, and they really enjoyed the conversations. And the criticism, which I also am open to always, was from brown girls, that they were like, you're not talking about more serious issues. You guys are not talking deeper about what discrimination in the workplace can look like. You're talking about it. And I always appreciated that, because it gave us a chance to be better.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, as a host, I know, and as a therapist, I guess, like I just have that whatever sense it is where it's like, I know I can't push this guest more.
Yeah.
I don't want these episodes to feel like sessions. I don't want it to be that the person comes on and they have to relive their traumas in order for it to be good content.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I had internally drawn a line, where it's like, I don't want it to just be about trauma. And like our arranged marriage episode, actually, we got feedback where it's like exactly that. We talked about a success story. We had a guest who came on, and again, she was upper middle class. And so she had a lot of different privileges that other women in arranged marriages don't. And we got the feedback like, why aren't you talking about the downside of arranged marriages? There's so much awful stories. And I agree with that, because I see it in my profession. Also, I see it living in this world. But again, I don't think we consciously chose that. We chose her because she was open to talking about it. And I'm not saying that I won't have a victim or a survivor on. I think that's equally important to have that space, but we need to have the dialogue about both things existing in our world.
Yeah. It's not one or the other. And honestly, it's funny because people that tune in over at Middle Fingers Up and people that tune in over there need to just maybe swap, because I will get, like, can you just like have the funny people that you had on before back on again? Because we want to laugh. And I think sometimes that's just it. And my husband taught me this. It's like, we can't cater to an audience. We have to be true to ourselves and what feels right. And the way that you talk about that makes absolute sense, and how you bring some problems to the surface without having to really hit a hammer and dig so deep. And I think when we start to give everybody what they're asking for, you start to realize, well, no one's going to be satisfied, because there's a lot of opinions out there. And the other part to that is there's so many platforms out there too, that if you want to have a serious or listen to a serious conversation, you can tune in to so many other podcasts, or read a book or watch a show or whatever it is. Because the good news is our community is starting to take that space up now. And we do have a lot of variety in where to go. But you have to be true to yourself, because I know when I tried to listen to some people's opinions, it didn't feel right. It was like, I'm just doing this. And again, I'm not, and you seem the same too. It's not for content. We're not out there doing it for the numbers and all that. We're doing it because we genuinely want to help bridge gaps in the community. And I think your you're on the right track in how you and your co-host thought about why you're intentionally doing what you're doing. And some people will go there. They will get serious and whatnot, right? And like on my end too, we're having a serious conversation and then we're laughing we're like, oh, I thought we were going to talk about suicide, but all right, let's talk about the morbid, funny part to it, I guess.
Like I've had other therapists on, and for background, I work with survivors of intimate partner violence, domestic violence. Like that is my day job. I work with perpetrators as well. And I had a coworker on, and we were talking about really serious things, but we were like in really cheerful moods. And we were reflecting about it after. And I was like, it's just because like, and she said this and I loved it. And she's like, well, if we don't laugh about it, we'll cry about it. And like, we do it every day. So yes, there's a level of like, we have more insight into it. We see it every day. So we're a little bit used to it, I guess, these issues, but it's also like, we're equally passionate, but I don't need to change the way I speak about it to show it's important. Like, I know it's important to me. I care really deeply about these issues, but I'm not going to sit and cry about it or go over someone's trauma just for content.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that is what we're seeing out there. And we'll talk a little bit about the TikTok stuff in a minute too. What would you say was missing in conversations about or with brown women when you started the podcast? Like, what gap were you guys hoping to fill?
Honestly, we were hoping just to have the space where other people could listen and resonate with it and really have these honest dialogues. And again, it's not like, I don't think about it as like, oh, we're doing some groundbreaking thing. Honestly, we just saw something that we both experienced. When she joined our team, when we worked together, there were so many things we could talk about. Like you said, like without subtitles, we knew why it was a secret. We knew why we were whispering something. And so the fact that like we always used to have those conversations after everyone left, and we would kind of just be like, oh my God, that's like we would just whisper about all these secrets that didn't need to be secrets, but we knew were.
Yeah.
And we're like, why don't we just do it as a podcast? And this was years later after we stopped working together. So it was just a way for us to be like, I know these are happening everywhere. And what if we just make space for it and have our conversations? Like whenever we had our catch-ups, we're like, why don't we make this into a podcast? Because it's her and me chatting about these real world issues. She has all this insight about women in finance and saving habits and investing habits. And I have all this insight about mental health. So I'm like, we can combine those conversations.
Yeah. After all of these conversations you guys have been having, what patterns do you feel keep showing up?
Oh my God, guilt.
Ooh, yeah.
Guilt is like the most constant. It's the most persistent pattern because almost every brown girl has talked about how they've had to overcome brown girl guilt, how they've had to really be like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not a selfish person because I want to travel. I'm not a selfish person because I want to move out of my house eventually. So just this guilt of existing. And I agree with that. I had so much guilt. And again, if I asked my parents, they'd be like, we never made you feel that way. Not on purpose anyway. And I know they didn't. And I still feel it. I still feel the responsibility of making sure that they are happy and that the family's okay and that everyone's thriving. And I had to learn to be like, I also fit into that family. Like I also have to see how I feel. And that was like my 20s wrapped up. Like my 20s was like me learning to not be guilty over every single decision or every thought I would have. I would have a thought about traveling and be like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. I should be using that money to take care of my parents or just send them on a trip. So just like so much guilt for not even actions, but just these thoughts.
Yeah. I think that's so well said. The guilt is a forever thing that's going to carry it. And I do think though, the younger generation, the young women in their 20s, even 30s, I went to lunch with a young brown woman. She's mid 20s. And we talked about this yesterday too, like that sometimes it's hard because for someone like her and her friends, they get in these slumps and they get into this guilt, you know, because their parents, some of them, their parents are able to help provide things for them. Some of them, it's their parents pay for their schooling. Some of them, it's they live at home. And we talked about where that guilt is coming from. And, you know, one of the things that I said to her, I was like, I feel that you women are kind of like paving as you're going, because I know I'm the cusp generation where we started to realize it. Some of us did something with it. But you guys are doing something new that your parents wouldn't know about. And so when it's something brand new, like not getting married, like not having kids, or waiting really long in the Brown family's way of timeline, or even not being happy in the one career and wanting to do a bunch of different things. These sorts of things are newer to our community. And it also means we're thriving, because that's what the white kids are all doing. Like, they've been doing it forever. And we're just, so I'm like, the slump and the shitty feeling is almost like, that means we're doing good, because we have this reflective space to be able to be like, I don't like where I'm at in my life. And many of us had to just put our head down and get shit done and do what we had to do. And no is better than the other. But I think I was just saying, like, give yourself some space and like some compassion, because you don't have someone in front of you saying, this is what's happening. You have people behind you that's looking at you being like, oh, thanks for doing this. Thanks for doing 6 jobs or whatever.
That kind of just blew my mind a little bit, because I have so many people kind of say that they feel stuck. And you're absolutely right. The fact that they have space to pivot, even the fact that I did, is pretty like amazing that we were able to make that space and make it happen. And it's not, it never, I don't know about never, but it's oftentimes like because of the people in your circle, right? It's not just, I don't think it's just all my decisions and all my successes and failures are just mine. I think it's a combination. But I do think as I gotten older, I've gotten a voice and I feel more confident in taking steps by myself. But it's so cool to think about the fact that we're doing our own thing and catching up to the white people.
We're also suffering in their kind of way, not in our historical way. It's changing, right?
New age suffering.
It doesn't have to be silence and sacrifice our suffering anymore. I think we're changing that way. So have you noticed any other themes or anything that stands out from guests that have come on where you and your co-host are like, oh, okay.
This is a really funny one, but our Brown Girl problem on the Brown Girl Problem podcast is that we still can't speak openly because we know our parents are listening.
Oh my gosh. Mine listen to every episode. And 100%, I'm just going to say it because whatever, but I also hold back. Totally.
It's like, it's so funny because so many times we're like, well, I want to say this. And like her and I obviously know each other really well. So we know when we're adding a comment, like where it's coming from. But so many times, and even our guests were like, hey, don't remove that part because my mom's not supposed to know that. So it's so funny that even on the space, because people are coming with their whole identity, they're like, yeah, I can't talk about this. Like my parents don't know. And my parents will definitely listen. So
or that we don't want to offend them. Like, so then we put in all this context of intergenerational trauma and they did the best they could and all these sorts of things. And then it's like, we make so much sense of why they did and are doing what they're doing. That we then also go into our guilt mode too, because we're like, well, I should know better. But sometimes I hold back too, because I'm like, even though I'm in my lane having my experience, doesn't mean that I can't share what I can't share, but I know the way it is in our community, we're so enmeshed that you say the wrong thing or whatever, then there's obviously offending and all that's the joy of the collective.
Exactly.
So that's so cool that you brought that up. I love that.
We're always like, it's our own ongoing Brown Girl problem on the Brown Girl Problems podcast. Like we just can't say the full story. That's hilarious. So anything else about the podcast that I haven't asked that stands out or that you're noticing that you want to share? I feel like it is Honestly, it's such a passion project and I love it so much. And all I would share is like we started off trying to figure out what we wanted and we're kind of getting more of a vision of it now. But that vision changes based on the political environment. Like we started off like having these really funny conversations that pivoted. We started having space for conversations because it was hard to be funny. It was hard to just casually talk when we know about what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So it's constantly changing and I like that. Like every season has a different tone or vibe, even every episode.
Yes.
And that's intentional because we both have day jobs, we both have families, like we both have these lives, and this this podcast is our passion project. So it just also shows up like based on what's going on with us that day. And that's also one way that we're being authentic. Is like when the war first happened in Palestine, everything that was going on, we didn't record for months because we just couldn't bring ourselves to have a conversation about dating as a brown girl, which was the next one we had like ready to go because we're like, that just feels it just feels like it's incomparable. Like we just can't. So it really does take time for us to show up because it takes so much out of you. And
Yeah.
even though I recorded it this month, but I released it this month because it's like a one-man production behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of what's happening is it's always so fluid.
Yeah.
It's always changing. And sometimes we miss the big conversations. Sometimes we try to have them later on, but it's just always a work in progress.
Yeah.
I love that.
I do too. It's like your time capsule, like
Mhm.
from your very first episode to where you are. And you're absolutely right. You're being authentic. You're going with where you both are and you're growing. And it's cool to be able to go look back and be like, oh, this is where we were at back then. And I am glad that you brought up the space that you guys took. And it's so interesting as a brown woman and your experience, because I felt it. But I was in a space of all white people. I'm married to a white person and I wasn't allowed to do that. Like I had to be neutral and I was overreacting. I was told all these sorts of things and these people that I had in my circle that I trusted. And so being a brown woman, having brown people experiencing that and then the guilt of coming out afterwards and being like, what the fuck? Like
Yeah.
this is not okay when there's people out there that are taking the space, the time and doing what they need to do, using their voice. And so I had to pivot with that too. And so when you said that, I was like, yeah, like when you go back and you look at it, it's like, what was my role in that time and where's my role,
Mhm.
at now? And we're just evolving at the end of the day. Like that's the best way I can. I mean, like I've told you on your podcast, I don't have all those people in my community anymore.
I feel you. It's tough to be in those spaces, but not be able to be your full self.
Totally. And I think this is where the talking with each other is so helpful because some of us are feeling similar things, or we can really use people like us sharing their perspective of like, no, it is okay to feel this way. It is okay to do this. And when we don't have these conversations, we miss out on that. And then we internalize. And so I feel the role modeling of us brown women talking to each other more than what it used to be like. I'm appreciative of that because it's like shifted from my upbringing where
Mhm.
we all hated it. We didn't know why. We didn't understand the pet versus threat and all the ways that everything had historically put us against each other. We just thought, oh, we're supposed to hate each other. So that's why it like melts my heart that you guys have this podcast and the work you're doing in the community as well, because you're serving primarily the South Asian right population as a therapist as well. So I'm curious, we talked a little bit about guest themes, but as a psychologist, any similar themes that you see in therapy with your clients as you do on the podcast, or like differences?
Yeah, I would say like guilt is still a definite thing that people are going through. And it's not just women, brown boy guilt, if that's what it's called. It exists in a different lens as well. They have the pressure to be the breadwinners. I'm a big advocate for, equity in general and the spaces of amplifying voices where there is there's a disadvantage. So for me, because I've grown up with a lot of really wonderful men in my life and I have best friends who are male. So that has helped me really understand like men's mental health and how that's a really soft spot for me, because historically, especially in many communities, not just ours, they don't have a space and they aren't taught healthy coping mechanisms, and it's really meeting them where they are at. So that's been something that's helped me as an adult, just because I've had these experiences. I've seen, for lack of a better word, like mental health crises that men have experienced in my life.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's also a different theme, whether it's like, whatever their stressors are, whether it's those deep-rooted cultural ones of being the breadwinner, or being successful, or being financially able, or if it's a different other stressor, it's just that they don't have coping skills that are healthy, or what we would consider healthy, So that's a common theme. And again, as background, like the work that I do is I do mental health in general, but I also do a lot of like survivors, victims, and perpetrators of domestic violence and family violence. So that the trends that I see are really patriarchal values that I thought didn't exist anymore. And that, to me, as a therapist who had just started out years ago, was like, that was the eye-opening thing. I'm like, how is this happening? Like, I thought this was in the past. I thought this patriarchal values, this very old school way of doing things, didn't exist in these generations. And I see women that are younger than me who are trapped in these systems. And that took me, honestly, a little bit of time to like wrap my head around. And now that I see it so often, now that we like know the themes off, I know what's going to happen when a client walks in, I understand their story more. Now I'm not shocked by it, I guess. But in the beginning, I was kind of like, wait, what? Like, this is happening? I thought this was like a stereotype from the movies. Like, I didn't.
Yeah.
And again, I think I'm sure it happened all throughout my life, but I was very sheltered from it. My parents didn't explain those things to me until I was much older.
Yeah. And I wonder too, like as you're talking and people are with us in this conversation, I wonder if others are kind of realizing it now too, of, oh, okay, this does still exist. And I think a big part of why I would imagine would be a shock too is it's silenced.
Yeah.
So we're not, as a community, we don't really like to go there with problems because we've been taught, the conditional pat on the head from history to be the good, obedient person. And then it's sort of passed on to how we're parented as young people too. Not all of us, but many of us. And so you're good if you bring home A's, you're good because you listened, you're the good girl, the good boy, these sorts of things, good kid. And then it carries on. And I think sometimes what we think is patriarchy or misogyny, we don't even recognize it in our own households or our own dynamics, because it's so deeply embedded. It's so normalized. So if there's people listening today that are like, what are you really saying? How would you clarify what we're really saying to help them sort of, pick apart what we're trying to say?
I would say that whenever we hear about these stories, whenever we hear or we talk about patriarchy in the South Asian communities, what I have seen is people are very quick to be like, oh, that's not me. That's this subsect. That's this group. That is these type of brown people that have this religion, that have this community, whatever, that are from this part. And that is what needs to stop, because it is happening everywhere. And that is as someone who works in the community. And I'm not saying that to say like, oh, we're all bad or we're all good. Like, it's just that we're not trying to use like us versus them mentality. We're all the same across the world. People are going through this patriarchal system that has historically been built, and people are still experiencing it in some forms more extreme than others. And they could be your family member, they could be your friend, they could be your neighbor, they could be someone who you saw at the grocery store. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that it's happening. So the moment we start saying, like, oh, but that doesn't happen to us, that doesn't happen to my family, that doesn't happen to whatever, whether it's affluence or religion or whatever, we need to stop that because it's happening.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I would try to say.
I think that's very well said. it is the quote of, oh, I don't experience that. I think even when you throw in something like racism, sometimes you go and try to tell your own community or your own friend of color that a mutual friend or someone you know or a boss is either sharing their wonderful misogyny towards you or sharing their racism or whatever ism it is. That is often the defense that comes up, which is, oh, I've never experienced that, or that doesn't happen to me. And I think it's like this weird defense thing because we always want to fix it or make it like it's okay or pretend it's not there. And it's been built in us over generations and generations. And I think that is really, really important. I agree with you to stop that, because one thing's happening we said that both things can be happening at the same time. Maybe it's never happened to you, but if someone is sharing it, it's like a child coming to you and saying someone inappropriately touched them. Our response wouldn't be, well, that's never happened to me. It's like we go into safety and, help mode. And I agree with you. I think we do have to be more open and less naive about the fact that this is happening in, and I like, sometimes I struggle too, because I've been to events recently where they're all women events and men have either helped sponsor it or help paid for it. And the way they get up and do their speech, and they have so many of the women in that room wrapped around them thinking that is what like the bar is in hell when we think of what a good person / good man is supposed to be. We think, oh my God, this is great. And I'm like, oh my God, we're being so tricked. And he might intentionally think he's so great too. And he's genuinely trying to be, but it's like, you just use the terms of I'm a feminist on one hand, and then in the other, you just put all these women down in the same, we do have to push back. I know as women, we're doing it. I see it. I feel it. And I think we have to also challenge some of these, because we're raising, I have 2 boys in my house, and I am like cleaning as much as I can that misogyny and patriarchy out of them. And these boys that are mixed race, growing up in my house in the generation they are, it's embedded in them. My husband and I haven't necessarily taught them these things, but they observe patterns, tones, and then they come out of the womb with all these kinds of built-in expectations already that I think you're right. We have to open our eyes to this more and more and more. We actually have to do better at this part of the way that we operate as a system in our household or as a community.
Yeah, I agree. I'm never tired of having these conversations. The one caveat I will say, and I think a lot of brown women would agree, is that the one switch that I made is that it's not my job to educate others now. Like I have a platform, I use it, and I think I spent, honestly speaking, like my 20s learning more, sharing that knowledge, trying to change people's opinions. And I had this friend who, like, low-key was misogynist. And the more I talked about feminism and equity and equality, he was kind of like, oh, the way that you talk about it makes me hate women. And I was like, hey, man, that's on you. Like, that's actually not about me. That's just you figuring it out, because we all saw it. We all saw it a mile away. And having those conversations about, like, oh, International Women's Day, the same comments come up every time we talk about inequality and mental health. We talk about all this, and I'm like, I've done the work. I've had the conversations. I feel like I've been a reporter on the ground trying to spread knowledge to all these men, and it's just, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not getting baited into it. And even now, I have people in my life, and I don't think they mean it in a negative way, but they're like, they know how I feel. So they're always like, oh, Rudy's going to tell us, right? Isn't this wrong? Oh, and I'm like, you do you, man. Like, it's not my job to educate you and tell you what's right or wrong at your big old age. Like, you can figure it out. And that's the only change I feel like I really made. And I'm so much more at peace, because I don't personally take it on when someone is just antagonizing me. I'm just like, that's on you. That has nothing to do with me.
You're a godsend. I don't know how you have come to that place. That's amazing, because you're right though. Like, we can only start with ourselves, and that's the only change that we can make is in our own immediate environment, and how, like you said, how you choose to respond. some of those people probably get less FaceTime with you, I would imagine, because it's like, okay, I can only do so much. And then there's like this internal piece of like, am I doing enough though? Am I doing enough? So how do you balance that? Because I think it's a tricky place of, I want to help, I want to teach, I have a role to play, but then, is it enough? Is it enough or not?
Honestly, I think you're catching me on a more secure day. Like, I feel like if it was a different day, I might have been like, I don't feel like I'm doing enough. Because sometimes I feel like that. I feel like I have extra hours in my day where I'm not doing as much as I need to be doing. And I have days like this where I feel secure because I had maybe good sessions and I made progress with clients and I see the changes, or I'm having these conversations where I feel like my cup is full. Like I feel really happy and I feel good about this. And I think that's, for me, just like a gut check where I feel like if I had capacity and my cup isn't feeling full, maybe I would do more. Maybe I would have the chance to educate someone or get into this debate or, get on some sort of platform and use my voice. But it really does depend on how I'm feeling. And that's what I've learned. Like I've really learned to check in with myself.
Yeah.
And that's
self-awareness.
That's what's been guiding me, where I feel like I used to have 3 jobs. I used to work because I just had so much energy and I wanted to work with everyone. I wanted to work with immigrants, which I did. I wanted to work with members of the South Asian community. I wanted to work with Indigenous population. So I tried to do as much as I could. And I feel like that's not the end of my journey. I picked a lane right now for the sake of like my family and managing work-life balance and all these things that are important.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm never going to go back to the things that I still care about.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. And I think self-awareness is a superpower, right? Like there's moments where you're like, you do you, as you said. And then there's moments, like you said, where you're like, maybe I will engage in this and whatnot. And I think I love your honesty. And I love that when I had met you on your podcast too, like you are who you are and you're not trying to be something that people want you to be. You're not trying to be something that, you feel like you should be. It's like, I just meet myself where I'm at every day. And I think that also helps work on that big G word that we were talking about too.
Right.
Because then it's this guilt of like, not enough, too much, and all this sorts of stuff. And it's confusing because there's all these platforms now and there's TikTok. And as I had mentioned earlier, you have the South Asian community for sure creating, however you want to say, space. And women in particular are on there that share all sorts of things. Some wonderful, some you're like, okay, this is different, but like about colorism, whiteness, generational shift, the good immigrant daughter, all these kinds of things in between. And so my question for you is, how do you, like, what would your suggestion be for brown women or men or people that create communities online or offline? Like, what is the key thing here in how they can share their fears, their dreams without that judgment or competition?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a tough question because the judgment will always be there. And that's something I've learned. And that's something I always say is like, listen, people are going to hate it regardless. People are going to have a comment, whether you're sharing your feelings online, whether you're wearing a low neck blouse at a party, whether you're just breathing as a woman, like someone's going to have an opinion. And I'm not saying you should ignore it. I think we should, if you're getting humbled, which I have been many times, I've been corrected and I learn from it. It's a shitty feeling to be called out. But if I'm like, okay, that's fair, that's valid feedback, I will take that and pivot. But take what's helpful. If it's judgment for the sake of judgment and you can recognize that, which we all can, if someone's making a comment and you know that your opinion doesn't matter or they're being a hater or whatever it is, ignore that. But if you feel like you're getting feedback that is helpful to you, like learn from it, iterate. There's nothing wrong with that. Because that's going to help you kind of keep growing your audience, keep reaching more people. And there's so many incredible content creators or people on social media who are having these fantastic conversations, yourself included, that it feels like everyone's doing it their own way. So yes, there's competition, but everyone's kind of, there's no need for there to be number one. Like we can all kind of share that space.
Yeah.
And I strongly believe that, like, yes, we might have some pioneers, people who have been doing it forever.
Yeah.
We have some leaders in the industry, whether it comes to beauty or this or that, but there's space for everyone. And we've always been about the collective. So we should continue that.
Yeah, that's so well said. And even in the world of podcasts, like there is so much room and space. There's a lot of things going on that I know I'm not good at, I can't do. And other people are doing it better. And, like we're all sort of covering the ground that we feel we understand the best or are most connected to, or, have had some kind of tie to. And I think that's the being authentic part versus trying to do it all, or like you said, it has to be number one or at the top. And I do value that a lot for sure. So thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. So what do you think is shifting for the younger generation? I don't know if through your podcast or even through clients, something that's shifting that maybe you're noticing that wasn't available to some of us, but is now.
Therapy.
Well, therapy's always been there. So why do you think there's more openness today to it? Where do you think that shift came from?
Online, I see this conversation more. I don't see it, and I don't really ask my clients who are younger, but like online, I almost see the younger generation use it as like, as a thing of pride, as a token of pride, to be like, I go to therapy. I talked with my therapist about all these things. We didn't have that. If I say I go to therapy, sometimes people still do a double take, and they might be a therapist. Like I have had that in these spaces as an adult in this profession.
Yeah.
So I think the younger generation has just like rebranded it, and I love that because they're owning it. They're saying like, I'm working on myself. Are you? Like, and I love that kind of switch. The downside to this, I will say, as a professional, is like we're diagnosing ourselves a lot more. We're giving ourselves a lot more disorders that may not be true. We're using words that we don't fully understand in the professional sense, but using to describe people. So it's almost like I go to therapy so I can use these words to attack you.
You're a narcissist.
Yeah. Oh my God, everywhere. You're a narcissist. We talk about this all the time at work because everyone's a narcissist. So it's things like that, right? Or someone will come in and they'll be like, I have this disorder. And I'm like, oh, okay, when did you get diagnosed? Who was it, a psychiatrist, a family doctor? And they're like, oh no, I read about it. And I'm like, okay, I'm not saying that you're not valid. Like, of course you've done your own research and you're advocating for yourself. But like, then my conversation becomes like, what has this label helped you figure out?
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of those conversations where I feel like the younger generation, way more than the adult, has come to therapy and been like, these are my diagnoses. This is everything I'm dealing with. And you have to kind of break that down a little bit.
Yeah. And what about like the big T word, trauma? Because we never understood it. Many of us were experiencing it, and really everyone experiences it. It's what happens immediately after that really justifies that impact. I experienced trauma, but safe people came and helped me work through it versus I experienced trauma and I had to handle it on my own, and now it's kind of running my life. We talk about trauma on so many levels. We say, trauma bonding, trauma dumping, trauma. So as a therapist, what are you noticing about that conversation? And is there any worries or anything that you have about that?
Even for me, like in my everyday language, I think we use trauma so often that it's lost its meaning a little bit. And so even when clients are like, oh, that's my trauma. And I'm like, okay, as a therapist, when I'm in session, I'm like, okay, we need to understand, like, is this the big T? Or are we just kind of chatting? Is it your trauma that when you see a car that reminds you of your ex? That's you like laughing and talking about it, but is there actually a trauma? Is it actually where you feel triggered? So even for me, with my friends, like I talk like this because I'm a normal human person and I say things that are not always politically correct or accurate. And I feel like we lose the emphasis of the word sometimes, because I also think everyone wants to have trauma. Everyone wants to I'm not discrediting the trauma that they have, but I feel like everyone wants to have a story. And I feel like people feel like they can't enter spaces without having some sort of trauma because it's everywhere. For women, for brown women, for even if we go bigger than that, it's like, well, I've been through this, so I have like you always have to say your experience in order to say why you can have an opinion. And I feel like that has really changed. We can show up as our full selves and be like, I want to share all this without having to tell you my backstory. Or even if I have a backstory or not, you know what I mean? But I feel like
it's like your reference check.
Yeah. And I think there's a validity to that because you know what you're talking about from lived experience. But I feel like trauma is this thing that now people carry, again, with the badge of honor. But there's a difference between what's actually traumatic, what's actually PTSD, what's actually something that people are suffering and trying to overcome with. And then there's trauma that we all have that's like, oh, that was so traumatic. And like, we kind of laugh about it. And it's okay that we talk about it both, but like, we need to know internally what's real and what's not. Because we get kind of wrapped up in it.
You make a really good point, and you talk about when these spaces where we have to sort of carry it along with us and like, oh, I experienced these things, so now I have something interesting to offer here. How do we go into these spaces and, you know, have open, non-surface, heartfelt conversations about, look, I'm going through hard things in life without having to share everything about, okay, well, let me tell you because I went through that. Like, it's almost like I hear you saying it's become our identity in some way. So how do we have real, authentic conversations without feeling the need to say, and here's my menu of things that I experienced in life. Like, where's the balance in that?
Honestly, I think it's really different for each person. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't show up with your full identity. I think people have really turned their trauma into something that's a success story, that they've owned it, that they've thrived under and really been a model for other people. So I'm not saying there's so much weight that holds to be able to talk about it. But I'm saying if you're someone uncomfortable with that, you can still have these spaces. I can use myself as an example, and I'm not saying I'm a model in that lens, but I have talked about a lot of different things, but I've been careful about not to breach my own boundary. I don't want to have a vulnerability hangover. I don't want to talk about things that I know I'll look back and be like, oh, I wish I didn't say that because it's not the part of the story I want people to focus on. There's so much I have to say. And yes, it comes from lived experience, but I am very careful now that I won't breach my own boundaries. And I would encourage women who feel like I want something to share, but I don't want to share my full self. That's where we can be like, you can still have these conversations. You can still make space for others. You can still raise your hand and talk. It doesn't mean that you have to share everything if you don't want to. If you want to, that's fantastic. All the power to you. You know, but you don't have to feel forced. Like, you can pick and choose.
Right. And by not being in a room and by not sharing your experience or your knowledge in that doesn't make you less either.
Exactly.
It might actually mean that you are very wise and are a good active listener. I think in order to be able to be in a room and share experiences, we also need people that are willing to listen. And some of us are just waiting for the other to stop talking so that we can start talking. So I think sometimes we undervalue the listeners in the room that bring in the empathy and allow us to feel comfortable enough to say, at least in the moment, hey, this is where I'm at, or this is what's happened to me. And we focus more on the brave person that talked, which is great, absolutely. But there's also another brave person in the room that's sitting there holding that, taking that, creating a safe space as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just to show up to those events, just to listen, just to make that, to maintain eye contact, to listen, to know that as a speaker, like, it's resonating with someone, you know, that person is so brave as well. And like, so if anyone's listening and they feel like they go to these events, but they feel like a fraud or they feel like they are an imposter because they're not speaking up, you don't need to unless you want to. Like, you have that choice. There's no conditions you should be putting on yourself.
Okay, my friend, I'm going to ask you before we finish up with the last few questions, your handle. Where do people get in touch with you, if they want to listen to your podcast, maybe even, have you as a therapist. I'm not sure if that's possible or not. So you can tell if it's just your Instagram handle or...
For now, yeah, we'll just do Instagram. So they can reach out to me at browngirlproblems.podcast. So we're on Instagram, TikTok, and soon to be on YouTube. But you can find us and listen to our episodes wherever you listen to podcasts, so Spotify, Apple Music. We're on there. Season 3 is releasing in springtime of 2026. And that's going to have video podcasts. So that's going to be on Spotify and Apple Music, but also YouTube. So that's super exciting, something I haven't done. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that season 2.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the world changes when video's involved, for sure. You have to... I learned. I hesitated for so long, and people were like, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I don't know, it's just like, well, now they can see me, my eyes going everywhere, whatever, whatnot. So
me fidget and
yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. Is there anything that you wish we had talked about today, or that I'd asked that I didn't, or you want to go back and add to, clarify?
Yes, actually, I had this thought, and I am glad you asked this, because you mentioned that you want to figure out, or you, as all of us, feel like, when do I know if I've done enough? There's this guilt piece that comes with it. And honestly, I've thought about this as we've been speaking, and I realized, like, I also feel like I have trust in my community. So if I'm missing a conversation, Kieran will have that conversation. If I'm not the one on TikTok making that reel about cultural appropriation, another person will. And the conversations are still happening. It's just that I don't need to be the one having them. And like, yes, in the past, I feel like I needed to be everywhere. So people knew my stance, people knew how I felt. But I feel confident that in the content that I'm engaging with, in the one that I'm supporting, in what I'm on or listening to, I have faith in my community that they're having these conversations, even if I'm not a part of them. So if I know I missed a topic, I'm like, okay, Kieran's going to have that guest and she's going to have this conversation and it's going to be amazing. So that's also kind of, I feel like, how I've let go a little bit and put that guilt off of me, where I'm like, it's still happening. Maybe in the past, where I was mostly in spaces where I was the only woman of color, I felt more pressure. And now I'm like, there's more of us who are speaking up about it. So it's not just a one-man show.
Oh, that is so, so well said. And it's really embracing our collective community mentality of there's many of us and we're all doing the work and we need each other to be able to do the work, so we can each focus on the thing that we're good at doing and not doing it all. And I think that's so, so well said. And there's so much trust with and for each other as well. And it eliminates that whole competition thing that we were saying in the beginning too, of not, oh crap, it should have been me that said that thing. Well, you can say it too, you can repeat it again, but for now, I'm glad that so-and-so went and had that conversation, and I'll highlight that. I think that's lovely, and that's so well said.
Oh, thank you.
Lovely.
Yeah. I had this thought while we were speaking, and I was like, yes, I'm going to say it.
Yeah. Add more. Middle, I know, because I have like 1,000 questions, but like you said, you just go where the journey's going, right? Yeah. And so, okay, what do you want to put your middle fingers up to today?
Okay, I want to put my middle fingers up to the fact that there is rising racism against South Asians, especially in Canada, but there's also rising cultural appropriation. You want to go to our weddings, you want to wear our outfits, you want to eat our food, but you turn a blind eye when there's racism happening, whether it's online or in person. And middle fingers up to that.
I think that is so important, and I want to pick that apart a little bit. I want to talk about that more. Like, 'cause you're so right. There is a lot of hate coming at us, towards us. There's these divisions that we in our own community have built against each other as well, because we side with the white people in particular that are being super racist to us. But then we're also doing that to other Indian communities as well. And I think we have to start to ask ourselves, where did this narrative of looking at that person of color come from? And then there's also that piece of how can we come together as a global majority? How can we come together so that we don't let that racism that's occurring towards our community split us up even more?
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you're seeing working, or anything that, you're doing, or suggestions?
I mean, honestly, it's having empathy for newcomers. These are people who are still trying to assimilate. And I feel like as an immigrant, when I came, our thing was heads down and assimilate. It was like, please be Canadian as fast as possible. No one told us that, but that was survival.
Yeah.
There was maybe less of us. It depends on the community you were in, but you also grew up in this Canadian culture. It was more enmeshed. People are outside playing with each other. I don't know if it was generational or what, but I think that there was a sense of community there, and I don't think it's a bad thing to be Canadian. I love being Canadian. I would never live anywhere else. Like, I love Canada. And that doesn't mean that I hate my own identity. Like, I am Indo-Canadian. I love being Indian, but I know that I recognize that, like, the newcomers are just struggling with the nuances and how to fit into the community. And we just have to offer, and from our community, we need to offer them grace.
Yeah.
And it takes some time. It's a learning curve. And I get it. It is frustrating. It's frustrating to see people who look like you who are acting the opposite the way that you would act. That is what's frustrating, is like people who look just like me, and white people can't tell us apart. So we're all lumped into one section, and they're acting in a way that I would never act. And that's annoying to me, and it's frustrating, and it's an attack on my identity. But I have to have empathy for them. I have to treat them the same as, how I want to be treated. And then outside of that circle, the racism that's happening externally, we need to protect our people. We can't side with the white people. We can't side with the racism and be like, I know. It's like, yes, it's frustrating. People are new to the country. They're adjusting. But it's not a specific, we can't say like those people are bad or those people are whatever. We can't add to the stereotype.
No, I so agree. And I think the thing that gets sometimes confusing for us is when we get the pats on the head from the white people, whether it's in our jobs, whether it's the social circles, like, again, I keep saying this too, like, I let go of a lot of these people that I knew for years and years and years, and they think that I'm the bad person. They think I've done something wrong, and there's no willingness for them to go and learn and grow around how come my friend of color is no longer my friend. It's like, oh, now she just thinks, she's with brown people and she's forgotten about us. No, I left that circle because there wasn't space to be better, in the sense of I would be part of these conversations where I would talk shit about our own people. And we get brainwashed into it. And there is a responsibility for, as people of color, just because I know I grew up with privilege. I know that I experienced things in a different way than some of our newcomers, some of the people back home. But just because I grew up in that way doesn't mean other people are growing up in the same way. And it blows my mind that we let that narrative that the white people are putting through with the newcomers, and then you see our own immigrants that have come years ago saying, yeah, these people. And I'm like, you were there too.
Yeah.
How did you forget, even though you were here 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago? And I think a lot of it is because immigrants were brought in as model minorities back in the day. And so there was this status and that conditioning, pat on the head, all of that. My grandfather cut his hair. He was willing to do all those things because he didn't have an actual choice.
Yeah.
And I think now we have choice. It's not an obligation in the same way. And so this is where the threat is felt with newcomers, because they're also coming in with a voice.
Yes.
And I think we have to actually look at that and think, look how far our community has come. And embrace that as well. And sometimes when we see our own people doing shitty ass things, again, it's because we're living in a country where we're with white people, that when someone of color does something, it looks like it's all our community and all our people. But when you look at crime rates and stats, it's not brown people having the highest rates either, but we somehow spin it. Yeah.
I mean, to that point, like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
I'm glad you did. It's all good. Yeah.
I was thinking about this because every Diwali this happens, right? I see videos too, and it bothers me because I don't like destruction or vandalism or anything, but I see people getting arrested for fireworks and putting fireworks in unsafe situations and playing with it. And then these brown kids get arrested. But I'm like, have you seen the white kids on Victoria's Day, like Victoria Day?
Yeah.
Have you seen them on May Long weekend? They're doing the same thing. It's just that maybe it's not going viral on social media. Maybe there's not all these comments, but I have grown up with those kids. I can tell you it's happening. I can drive by a white community and see in the parks it's happening, but they're not getting arrested. So it's like, we have to acknowledge there is racism, and then there's this internalized racism within our own community, like you said, and they both need to be worked on.
Yes.
It's like, you need to defend brown people, whether you're brown or not, in public spaces.
Yeah, you cannot talk shit about your own people to white people.
Exactly.
Like, you have to do it in your own home with each other.
Exactly. Don't be a pick-me. Don't pretend to be white. Because we've done it. I've done it. I've fit in with white people by talking shit about my own community. And I'm being honest about that. And I will never do it again because I have learned. And people who are on that journey, please learn, like, it's not helping because they're viewing you the same way.
Yeah. And PSA, those of us that have chosen to assimilate in love and be in interracial relationships and be with white people, I think our white partners have huge ass responsibility because of the power dynamic. As whether you're a white woman with a brown man or you are a white man with a brown woman, you have not erased racism by proximity, by being with one of us. You have a lot of work cut out for you. And you know, like, I talk to the younger generation, I talk to 20, 30-year-olds that are in interracial relationships, and I'm like, how come it looks so smooth on the outside for you? Like, what are you guys doing? As you know, my husband and I are renovating our relationship. And they're like, I think it's because our generation is learning all of these things. And in a way, I said I was very late at learning it. And they start the relationship very open with this ain't gonna work if you are not going to recognize this. And when I bring this up and we talk about this, you have an active role in all that. And there's these ongoing conversations that newer couples are trying to have. And it's mostly the brown women with the white men, because I think our brown men with white women, there is a whole different thing going on in there that we could do a whole different episode on. You know, as you had mentioned earlier, even just not being able to talk about their own stuff, and now they're with a voice, you know, like a white woman's. It's a whole different conversation. I'm not even talking about them. I'm talking about the brown women that are like, yeah, I'm with a white dude, and this is sort of how we work this out. And we're, you know, right in the front, it's like, have you ever dated a person of color before? And if not, this is kind of what you have to be prepared for. And I think we as a community owe it to each other to continue to do this fucking work. We're not any better because we are with white people or have a boss that's white that loves us or whatever. Like, we're being played. So we have to, like, honestly recognize a lot of what's actually happening versus, oh, they're just really nice people.
Yes.
Racist people can be really nice. Absolutely. If you are obedient and do what they expect you to do, you know. And, you know, I've been told that I'm fantastic because I don't have an accent. I'm great because I understand pop culture. All these wonderful, you're like a really cool brown chick. That's, you know, and then you're like, oh yeah, okay, so I am cool. It's the other, like, as you said earlier, it's the other brown people. Yeah. But no, it's not. We're all in the same boat, whether you're a newcomer or not. But I'm glad you brought that up because you probably see that too, having worked with immigrants and then in the work that you're doing now as well. I bet there's a lot that's surfacing that we really do owe it to our community to not get caught in the deport them narrative.
Absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're all out to be frustrated, but we've lost our empathy for newcomers. We've lost that, regardless of what they look like and what we look like. We hear someone with an accent, if we mock it, I'm like, grow up. That's someone speaking English. They could be much smarter than you. I just don't have space in that in my life anymore, and I kind of just ignore it. But I try to tell other people, I'm like, just have empathy. That's it. Like, that's all we need to do to feel better about this entire situation, is teach them the ways, show empathy, give them grace when they need it, because you got that as an immigrant. People did give us grace. I know that. So we just gotta repay it. Pay for
Yeah. And it's, it's coming up a lot in all the systems, the medical system, the legal system, the school system. Like it's definitely not something that is going away. And I think because as a community, we are trying to combat it. I think that's also why this like hard level of old school racism is returning again, because white people are scared and they're like trying to fight for the wrong reasons. And, you see the Ku Klux Klan coming back. You see all of these like Aryan Nation clubs that are openly standing everywhere in all parts of Canada and, having their protests. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's scary. But also that's a sign that we are doing something as a community that is making them feel threatened. But, because we're not going to respond in the way that the older generations did, which was you take a bottle to the head when you're walking down the street. Like that's just not the way that it's going to be anymore.
No.
And also like there's so much respect as newcomers too in wanting to be part of this country as well. And so that belongs to the Indigenous people, first of all, too. So like, let's call it what it is. So I think we have to be okay. And my husband and I met two couples when we were on a trip recently, and they live in LA. They're Mexican, and they talked about all the crap that's going on in LA and the experiences and colorism. Some of them are like, we are light skinned and we know that we're getting treated differently than our family members. And there's all these different levels that people of color are experiencing. But when one of the women, she was talking about, she works in the hospital system and some of her own experience with white people. Every time she would bring up white people, when the four of us were sitting together, she would whisper. And so I was like, even right now, we're sitting here. I'm like, and you feel the need to protect when you're sharing your grievances about how you are being treated, about how us people of color are being treated. But this is us being so caught up in the system of white supremacy. Yes. And she's like, I know, but I just don't want to offend your husband. And I'm like, do you think he's married to me? Do you think he doesn't know what's going on? Like, I appreciate what you're doing, but you're not the one that should be whispering,
Take up space. Take up all the space you need as long as you feel safe.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key, like you said, is the safety part. So I really appreciated this part of the conversation. So thank you for that. Lastly, call to action. If there was one thing and only one thing people that are with us in this conversation today leave with, what do you hope that is?
You can show up with like all parts of your identity. You can show up as joy as part of your identity too. It's kind of off what we talked about, but like, don't feel like you need to show up as your identity of carrying the weight of all your ancestors and the historical collective trauma and all these things. You can show up as yourself, having that historical baggage, but you can show up as joy too. Like we can use joy as rebellion. We can use joy as thriving. We can use joy as resilience. So don't feel the need to be the identity that weighs you down. Like, let it lift you up. Show up as yourself. Be authentic, but experience joy, and that's okay.
Very well said. Look, I'm really happy that you and I connected via social media, and I'm so happy that you invited me. I'm so happy that you agreed to come on today. I really appreciate your work you're doing with our community, the work you're doing for brown women, and you as a human. Just I adore you, and I thank you for the messages in the background, and thank you. That's all I can say at this point is thank you for coming over to my house for dinner. Last words. You get to leave us with whatever you want.
My cup is so full. Thank you for inviting me. This was such a good conversation. I think you brought out the parts that I've always wanted to say, but I don't think I've used my platform to even say everything. So the fact that I've been on yours and I can use it to say all these things I'm thinking, I really appreciate it, because you put me on the spot in a good way, right? I'm thinking about it, I'm reflecting about these things, and it's leaving me, and it's hopefully leaving the audience reflecting as well, because I haven't been asked these questions in the same lens. So I really am like, wow, that was so good that I actually got to say how I feel, because I didn't even know how I was going to articulate. So thank you for that. This was like, for me, I'm like, wow, this was the best conversation I've had.
Oh, look at what happens when we get together and we just have conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the hope. So thank you for coming on, and come back again soon, please.
Yes, I would love to.